Alrighty. Well, everybody, welcome. I'm glad y'all made it today. And the presentation that we're going to be doing today, I'll give you the reasoning behind the title before I actually start. And there's a really important principle that we're inciting by doing this program. And one is that whenever we're looking at somebody that's in crisis or under severe stress, a lot of times we hear as clinicians, I am a clinician, by the way, my name's Armando, I forgot to introduce myself, and I'm an LPC within the state of Texas. And I work with people that are highly acute many times, but often just in day-to-day dealings, as a person, as a parent, as a friend, as a peer, coworker, we hear things, I've heard things along the lines of, I don't want to be here anymore, I want to die. Or I've thought about it, or I've had a plan, or I've in the past tried or severely depressed, experienced this to where maybe I did attempt, and I'm very lucky to be here still, but I made it. When somebody starts to contemplate suicide or loss of life, seriously, whether they're with somebody and they mention it or from the point they're doing it alone, we have a 10-minute span. According to the studies, we have 10 to 13 minutes in which to think if we're suicidal, decide on what we're going to do, the plan, and attempt and possibly complete. Now, what we're doing tonight is not an anti-suicide program, but it's something that we can use every day. It's something we can do to improve our outcomes. Because in the county that I live in, this is Tom Green County in Texas, we have a higher rate of suicide than the state and national average since 2014, and it's not showing any signs of slowing down or getting any better. And this is something I would like to do in hopes that as a front line, everybody that I'm talking to, and these are the folks out there across the state, across the nation that are plugging in, that are the front line before we ever get help by a professional, a semi-professional folk, people at the hospital. So that 10 minutes is what we're looking at. And whenever we're talking to somebody, many times we have to understand that they may be under stress, we're under stress, and we're in the business of doing our lives very quickly, efficiently, and not wasting time. And because of that, sometimes we inadvertently, not meaning to invalidate people by what we say, what we do, and how we say it. So therefore the title, and we'll start the presentation now. The most important conversation you never knew you had. When stressed or in crisis, individuals reach out and get invalidated and shunned by what we say, how we say it, and what we do. Very specific. These are the three things we have to pay attention to when we communicate. So communication, one, is a default. Come on in. Welcome. And that means that communication is happening without your effort necessarily. If you're talking to somebody, we usually assume that's communication. Communication is something that occurs at the body language level whenever you can see somebody. If you see someone, communication is happening before the verbiage ever starts. So what we have to look at right now is, what is communication? What is it that I'm doing or not doing whenever I invalidate somebody by what I act like, what I sound like, and what I'm actually saying, the code, the very words that I'm saying. So we're going to go on with the next slide. I got to hit the other button. Communication is a default option. I just mentioned that. That's what happens without my trying. Communication is occurring right now. Whenever you walk in, body language says how comfortable you are, whether or not you're tense, whether or not you're worrying about something or whatever, but I'm interpreting that within milliseconds just by watching how you're moving. So communication happens by default. Here are the reasons why. This is something that is supported by science, but body language makes up 50% of the influence of any one message that anyone speaks. 50% is body language, more so than the code at the very bottom, the actual words, the things that we say. That makes up 7% of the influence of any message that we make. 7%. And that's the important part. That's the what, the why, the where, the details. Why is it only 7%? It's not that it's not important, it's just that the influence is less than body language first, 50% of the message. And then how we say it, the tonals, the sound of it, 43%. Those are huge influences that we have before the words are ever really even taken in and made sense of and understood. The message communication, info, words, code, spoken are 7% influence of any message we transmit to another. So it's not so much that the code isn't important. It's critical, yes. But what's more critical is how we deliver it. the body language, the tone, the sound of it. So the message is the most important part, but how we deliver it, once again, is critical. So what we're going to be doing today is doing some how-to. This isn't going to be about. I'm going to be talking about how to do this. How are we going to do this? What's it look like when I communicate well? Because going into the holidays, we're what? How far away are we from Thanksgiving right now? Week and a half, 2 weeks, right? Maybe that. But we all know that there's a lot of tension to meet expectations of what? Traditions, how we do things, family, people, work, working in retail, Black Friday, what happens then? Lots of emotion, right? But that sort of thing, the ramp up is huge. And it happens at home too. And there are a lot of bad feelings that go along with holidays for many people as well, because of past things, because of pressure, expectations. And what we're going to look at here is, how can we be self-aware during communication? Did I jump? Okay. Nope, I did not. Communication, rapport. And why self-awareness? Because whenever we're communicating, many times we're okay, but the people that we interact with may be struggling. They may be struggling with depression, anxiety, once again, all those negative things we're kind of talking about, that influences that may keep us from feeling as well as I could, or enjoying the holidays like we are expected to, kind of. Okay? So here's some things to pay attention to. When speaking to a person that is stressed or in crisis, pay attention to their body language. Notice I said self-awareness, but I'm telling you pay attention to them. This is really important because oftentimes when we're talking to somebody speaking very fast, all of a sudden you see the tension, the activity, and they're really abrupt. We tend to match and get paced by them. And we tend to follow at that speed, whether it be slow, fast, whatever. But the tension, anxiety, the stress is a huge suggestion that tells us follow along, and we tend to lose self, in a sense, for a moment. And we're no longer a good communicator, but rather we're a follower at that point. And what if they're reaching out to us for help? We have just became weak and unable to help, and they're going to read the body language, and if they are in a position where they may be potentially contemplating suicide or self-destructive behavior, or numbing themselves by using drugs or alcohol in excess, then we have become unable to assist. Rapport is not happening. Communication happened by default. Rapport is a higher level of communication, one that involves trust and care. And if we can't get that because we defaulted to communication, once again it happens anyway, then we're not able to help. And the next thing we need to pay attention to is, well, what do they look like? Are they calm? Are they tired? I was just talking about the pacing. Are they really agitated? Are they moving quickly? Are they tense? Fast, abrupt motion. I kind of demonstrated a little bit of that. Those are the things, the body language keys, the reads, the tells, that give us an idea as to how I'm helping, can I help, and also gives me ideas to how to keep a measure of distance so that I don't become unable to assist. Okay? The next thing, how they sound when speaking to you. Is it loud, soft, clear? Sometimes there's some mumbling. You may be able to tell whether or not somebody's been using. They may be a little slurred, a little slow in response, a little delayed, maybe a lot of stuff going on inside. We have to pay attention to those things because often when we're communicating, if somebody is going to push away and not want to get help, it's going to be within those symptoms of sorts, those signs, those signals that will hide whether or not they're going to reach forward and say, hey, I need help, or not. And that's going to be determined by how we react to them. So what are they saying is the bottom line. What is it that's being said? It's not that the 7% isn't important, but this is the part that we really have to pay attention to. Do I want to hurt myself? Am I depressed? Do I just need to talk? And this will lead into the other parts of what it is we're going to visit with just a moment. So how to be self-aware during communication / rapport. Once again, rapport is a higher level of communication. It's not default. It's one where we're intending. It's one where we're trying to make, one, trust happen, safety, if there's a sense of anxiety, stress, or worry, okay, that's going on with the person we're talking to. But it involves us and them actually having a bridge of communication where you exchange information. Once again, communication is the default, and you read that. It happens. You don't have to try. With rapport, there's intent, there's thought, and there's a response there. If you're watching body language, listening to tonals, and to the message, you are not matching or being paced by the stressed individual. We just discuss that. You are present and actively listening. That means we're kind of having a flow of things. While you tell me something, I can reflect back. If you do something like you're nodding your head right now, I'm responding to that as well. We're paying attention to these little changes, and we're kind of in rapport. Even though maybe we didn't speak it, but there's a sense of comfort or safety, okay? That sense of trust in the communication. Often when rendering help, we tend to match or be paced by the stressed person. If communication becomes the default state, then rapport cannot develop. We just discussed that. So if for whatever reason I give off language, body language, that may seem shocked or tired or worried, or maybe, dude, I'm kind of in a hurry, I got to get out of here, I have invalidated them, not intending to. And maybe we do it with the best of hearts. Hey, why don't you do this? I got to go. I got stuff to do. Not meaning to harm, but what if this is the last reach out? Could be. Now, the reason behind this program, once again, is because we have 10 minutes. But also, what is now being called post-vention. Not a term I particularly like, but we have survivors groups. We have material back there on survivors group as well for people that have had tragic loss. But that's something that has a large measure of wisdom on the tail end of it, the after the fact as a result. The reason I'm talking about this today is because we're taking what they tell us. Oh, I could have seen this. I should have done that. Oh, that's what they were saying. But then they now have a loss that could have possibly been averted. This is not a cure, but it's an opportunity. It's a possibility for change, and also giving people the tools necessary to be able to understand that, sometimes we do get busy. But if we have the tools, I'm showing you the how-to and the what to do, then maybe we have a better chance of averting that from ever occurring again. I would like to say it may not be perfect, but you know what? It's better if there are fewer of those numbers than what we have right now. And that's the goal. So when we render help, we talked about being matched. Sometimes if you talk to somebody and their emotional intensity is a little higher than yours, we have to be very careful. So it's good to pay attention to them and try not to be too self-oriented, because then we will get caught up once again. So if hearing something that is difficult or shocking, avoid looking shocked or speaking judgmentally and giving your opinion. Now, the reason I mention this is not a reflexive response, but rather sometimes it's a very socialized, learned thing. When somebody says something, should you or should you not act aghast? Oh, look, that's a terrible thing. Some of it is learned. Some of it is learned. So this is why I put this up here. If we're listening to something that may be shocking, the best thing we can do is listen, one, non-judgmentally. Because if we're giving that shock response, we have decided that is a shocking thing, and I'm doing the social things. I want them to know that I think it's terrible. But if they're reaching out for help, that means that if you think that it's shocking, and I just told you about that, you're just taking yourself out of the helper spot if you really sincerely wanted to help, not meaning to, once again. The people that do go to these groups, once again, the survivor groups, often they say that we found out this was the last call, this was the last reach out. And I didn't listen, I didn't answer the phone, or I was in a hurry, I was abrupt. Invalidating statements, what not to say. This is really important. What are some of the things that we may hear? I'm going to ask y'all to kind of play with me a little bit, interact. So what kind of things do we hear whenever we hear somebody, let's say on television, or hear somebody just talking, having a conversation about things that are annoying? Oh, get over it. Why are you doing that? Something wrong with you? Why are you thinking like that? We question, we judge, we point fingers. And it's okay to speak like that, but whenever we're looking at the severity of a crisis or somebody that's really, really stressed, what is that telling them? So what's wrong with you? Why are you thinking like that? Don't you know that there are people that have it harder than you? Suck it up. Just get a job. Get busy. That's what I do when I feel sad or depression. That's dumb. I don't believe in depression or mental illness. You're just lazy. Get over it. Those are some hard things to hear, just having them read. The reason I did this too is because these are the things specifically that come out often without our really being mindful when we speak them. We're assuming that everything is equal at that point. We've taken our belief system and projected it to someone else. I'm okay, therefore they must be by default. Not so. Not always. So how are these statements and directives invalidating? Well, first thing, they imply to the listener you're weak, you're acting as if, maybe you want attention, What other things? And I'm sure y'all have plenty of things come to mind. You're inconveniencing me with your little problem. Often when we're in a hurry and when we're abrupt, we give a sense of you have inconvenienced me. You've taken from my life and my time is valuable. Sometimes we imply that without speaking it, and we say it loud and clear by how we act. Once again, body language, right? Tones, right? More so than even the message. I didn't really mean those words. But how did I deliver it, the way I behaved, the way it sounded? Very compelling. So here's some things not to say. These are some really specifics on how to make communication rapport by avoiding these things, okay? And they're absolutes. Absolutes are emotional elevators. They're used to win arguments and influence beliefs and opinions. Functional exaggerations, just the facts. Stick to the facts is what we need to do if we want to develop rapport. But when we speak in absolutes, we're speaking in the sense of something that's inarguable. You can't touch it. Kind of like, you're never there for me. You always do this. It's always like this. Everybody's doing it. You're not doing that. You're not going to be around long enough to realize once the length of a never, a forever. Or even to be able to meet an everybody, everything, all the time, everyone, everywhere. I think, yes, something like that. But when we talk to each other very flippantly, we throw these out there because we want what? We want influence. We want to win the argument. We want to stop the argument. We want to influence you in my way of thinking, this sort of thing. But when we use it in a way to stop something, to hurry something along, especially if somebody's reaching out, this becomes very difficult to get past because it now becomes a belief system that's ingrained in the person because you just told them what. You're not important enough, you've invalidated, not meaning to. And you may have said what you said from the best of your intentions, wanting good for them, but I'm in a hurry. But they may have taken that part as not important enough. So we have to take into consideration what we speak and measure these things, the absolutes in particular. Validating by active listening. So what can we do to make it better? I just kind of told you what not to. Well, here's some things. When actively listening, do these things. Listen and respond reflectively. Be able to respond by telling somebody, what's your name, ma'am, if you don't mind?
Chris.
Okay, and you?
Sonia.
Okay, so Chris and? Sonia. Okay, I just kind of responded and listened and I heard and I responded with your name. That's a reflective response. Okay, and by doing that, you're letting people know that I'm not just hearing the words coming out of your mouth that sound like words and just like, okay, whatever. But I'm actually absorbing it, maybe thinking about it, and you came in first, you came in second, so I'm kind of making sense of it. And I'm validating you, saying, hey, you're valuable enough for me to think about you that way, okay? Versus just, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. So active listening, very important to be able to respond reflectively. Another thing, whenever we're listening, try not to speak whenever someone else is speaking, right? That's just polite. But also, this allows you to get the information that they're speaking to you if it's a particularly stressful or crisis-ridden situation. What they're saying, once again, that 7%, very critical. We have to listen to that, listen for it. And if we're speaking, we're not listening actively. We're actually trying to engage in the conversation, doing the social thing, versus trying to really be of assistance if they are reaching out. And the only way we're going to find out is by listening actively. Do not formulate your response to what the person is saying while they're saying it. So if you're thinking about what you're going to say back while they're telling you, what's your name again, ma'am? My name's Armando. Notice right in the middle of what you're saying. One, that's rude. But two, I'm not thinking about, you could have been telling me the name of your dog for all I know. But the thing is, I wouldn't know that because I just interrupted you. So often, one of the most important things is try to listen actively. Try not to formulate even in your mind, what it is that you're going to say back, because you have to hear what they're saying, because what they're saying may not be what you think it is, or what you're expecting. So make comfortable eye contact. Don't glare or stare. Often when things are stressful or tense, they may have a glare. They may be looking at you, may have that look, the hunched over body language that says, I'm scared, I'm stressed, anxious. And it's hard for us not to respond that way. Often it's like, okay, let me help. And we want to reach out, and sometimes it's very natural for us to want to go up and do something like that, but then we're mirroring. And if we're doing that, once again, we're giving the suggestion, wow, if you're stressing out with that, good Lord, what are you going to do if I really tell you something? If I tell you what's really happening? So we've been taken out of the space of helper. We're trying to do that. This one's hard for us. Do not offer solutions to problems. So if you're hearing somebody telling you something, how often do we always hear, well, just Get busy. Get a job. If you just stay busy, you won't be thinking like that. You're always depressed, you tell me. Think positive thoughts. Just think rainbows and unicorns, right? That cures everything, right? Well, we can tell people what to do, prescriptions, but also if somebody's reaching out, what do you think they really want? Do they want somebody telling them what to do? Or do you think that maybe they need somebody just to listen, non-judgmentally, without offering a solution, without telling them how to live their life, because they're the expert in their life. You're not. I'm not. So we have to acknowledge that by letting them know, hey, I'm here, I'm listening, versus let me tell you what to do so you can fix that, because, wow, I'm in a hurry and I'm missing dinner. I have important stuff to do. Do not offer your opinion. Your opinion serves you and is only for you. Whenever we decide to tell somebody, wow, that's really rough, that's kind of a stupid thing to be doing, you don't want to do that. Because if they made that decision with the best of the best they had at that time and that's what came out, what did you just say? We're not what we do, but whenever one is stressed, many times we feel like that. We are what we do sometimes, at least by our judgment, or at least by the judgments that we learn how to heap on ourselves from others. So very tough thing. Do not speak judgmentally. If you do respond, it's okay to respond and answer questions and have a conversation, but try to do it in a manner that's, one, reflective, two, equanimical, and three, non-judgmental. Try not to give them your opinion about it, but just tell them, hey, I'm listening. Is there anything I can do? Anything I can help you with? And if it's just listen, then lend an ear. That's what we've got to do. Validating by presence. Have you ever talked to somebody and you're talking to them, but they're not really all there? They're like checking on the Dallas Cowboy game. They're on their phone. Or they're talking to you. It's like, yeah. And they're standing here making the effort, but they're looking over here. Attention's nowhere near where I'm happening. That's very important, to be able to be present, be able to, once again, reflect. That means you're actively engaging. But you're also validating the person by letting them know that I'm here with you. Your time is now, my time is now, and we're not over there doing what it is that I would like to be doing. Wow, you've got to think about that, right? Kind of strange. So we avoid looking away, very important. I just mind that. Avoiding texting or talking on cell phones is probably a really good thing. Being calm and smooth in motion, this is really important. If somebody is stressed, if they're depressed, chances are there's a component of anxiety. Chances are there's going to be some motion sensitivity. So if you're moving abruptly, quickly, and twitchy, not a good thing. You will probably be elevating that sense of discomfort. And when somebody's moving that quick, generally one is not speaking. Okay, one is in fight-flight response for the most part. So we don't want to elicit that in them if they're already uncomfortable. Let them know I am here and I am listening. If you want, listen if you want rather, and empower them by allowing them to choose. That means if you ask them, is there anything I can do for you? Listen, give them a little time. There might be some delay. Let them know, hey, I'm here. If you want some water, I'll go get you some if you'd like. Or can I talk to you? Can I sit down and visit with you? Often they'll be like, hey, that's okay, I'm fine. If they don't want to talk. Can't force it on them. But assuming there's rapport to be had, ask, allow them, don't inflict yourself upon them, listen. We want to flow with them and allow ourselves to respond to what's most appropriate. Validating by not offering solutions on the spot. It is our nature to point out the obvious to our peers. And if we're assuming that there's nothing wrong, yeah, it's okay, but what if, just what if, one of our peers is going through something and we can't tell and they're hiding it really well. And we go into our default setting. We're not going to be potentially the best of helpers if they are reaching out. How many people are stressed and are really polite when they're stressed? Often it's ugly. Sometimes some expletives. Sometimes it's like no. Sometimes it's elevated voice, back off, and kind of aggressive, maybe a little hostile sounding. Maybe even a little body language that indicates a little, hey, don't get too close. Or back off, or what do you want? This sort of thing. So we have to be willing to pay attention. So how do we offer validation without solutions? Set your beliefs and values aside. They will still be there. Often whenever we talk to people, we start trying to tell them about how I believe, or it becomes about myself. It's no longer because I'm uncomfortable. But if we're really there and we're present, we're not trying to convert them. We're not trying to tell them, hey, believe how I believe, because this works really good. Even if you know that what they're doing is not working well, you can't really tell them that. It's not a good thing, because it's personal. It's up to them to decide to do that. You may see the error. They may not have realized it, but it's not up to you to correct that. That's theirs, and we have to allow them to be able to fix that if that's the case. But whenever we're stressing and anxious and somebody is there and we want to reach out, we don't want someone offering solutions, but also we don't want someone to tell us that what we're believing is wrong either. That invalidates us further, because not only have I done that wrong, good God, I've done that wrong as well. So next thing, listening not judgmentally comes up again, and not finding reasons to mismatch your beliefs. If you hear them say something that does not match your way of believing, it's probably best to keep that to yourself and try to understand that this isn't about you. This is now about them and their safety, if they are reaching out. And your beliefs will be there later. It's not personal. And sometimes we have to not let it be personal, because they may even strike out at us. So we have to be very careful whenever we're trying to assist and be of assistance. We're wanting to help by being sensitive to the person and their individual differences. We have to respect that. And beliefs are part of those differences that we have to learn how to respect. So one really important thing, responding mindfully versus fearfully and reactive. Whenever we hear things that are shocking, we tend to have an elevation of arousal. So if we're listening and trying to be of assistance, the hard thing is to stay nice and calm. Especially if somebody's crying, somebody's agitated, somebody's anxious, or they're really irritated or loud, or maybe even a little angry. This does not mean go in there and try to fix, but it just makes it a little more challenging when we try to be of assistance. So how can I react mindfully? When we respond, we're responding with thought first, reasoning, and a sense of time and awareness. Whenever they're responding anxiously and angrily, they have trouble understanding, they meaning us humans, including us when we're there, that time is passing, but they're experiencing the discomfort when? Right now. And there's a hard thing going on in the sense that you might tell them it'll get better. If the pain is right now, what's the most powerful suggestion? Well, the discomfort that's going on right now. More so than what's going to get better here in about 15 minutes when your anxiety attack is over. When you're trying to convince them it'll get better. Sometimes the only thing we can do is listen and be present versus trying to not only offer solutions but tell them, hey, let me change your mind. Let's start thinking about something else, especially whenever the discomfort's happening now. And we can't derail that very easily, but by being there with them, that will settle versus the words we'll speak. It's our presence, our body language, what we do more so than what we say that's going to make the biggest difference at that point in time. So one of the reasons that it's hard to conceive whenever we're under stress is that there's a blood flow shift. So 100 IQ, 105 IQ globally is what we have running around, but whenever we're under stress, that shifts. We become stressed, we go into fight or flight response. We do that, we get physically stronger, but we also get a little dumber. Our blood flow shifts from our frontal lobe to our skeletal muscles. No longer are we resting and digesting, so it's no longer in our intestines and our stomach, because we're not safe anymore. The assumption of safety is gone. We're now fight flight, so we have to be stronger, but we don't have to be able to socialize and speak eloquently. So we don't need as much IQ temporarily. It goes away. But whenever we're under stress, we experience that. If we're seeing somebody under stress, they're going to have a hard time understanding sometimes what we're having them think about. If it's a temporal thing having to do with time, it'll get better versus I'm feeling uncomfortable right now. It's a hard sell. Breaking faulty beliefs. I don't believe in mental illness, just get busy. This is a really difficult thing that does invalidate people rather quickly when we're under stress. And I'm not talking about beliefs that they hold, but rather functional beliefs that maybe I do. So whenever we're talking to people that are in crisis, sometimes as clinicians, we hear people that say, well, my mom told me, or my uncle told me, yeah, just buck up, we don't believe in that. Oh, that's embarrassing. Depression, it doesn't exist. You just need to get a job, need to get busy. That's going to fix it all. The more busy you are, the less mentally ill you're going to be. Okay, that fixes it. It doesn't exist. Even though in the face of psychopharmacology and that we treat things like long-term mental illness like bipolar and major depressive disorder, it doesn't exist. So things like this are difficult, and they are invalidating to somebody reaching out. On the side of the survivors groups, often the people that wound up going to the groups were realizing that I can't believe I was telling them that. I can't believe that what they were experiencing was real until they're no longer there. Once again, the reason why we're picking up some skills today. So anxiety happens when somebody's needing focus and direction. Is that a belief? Yeah, it is. That's assuming that anxiety is not a physiological thing. It's very physiological. It's our reflex. Excessive anxiety is our reflex going, wow. It has nothing to do with how busy you are. There are a lot of busy people that have good jobs that suffer with anxiety, and they can't help it. So these kind of things we have to get past. And if we have beliefs such as that, we have to be able to set those aside so we can be of assistance to people. How to validate an individual in stress or crisis or any other time. This isn't just for the holidays. This is an everyday thing. So I'm going to ask a couple of quick questions. Do we stress out only during the holidays? It's too simple, right? Well, no. How many people have kids in here that you're in a hurry taking them to school, going to the doctor, and what else? What did you do? Oh my God, I can't believe you did that, that sort of thing. So we stress out just about any time during the year. So these tools are useful at any time throughout our life. And I'm trying to encourage people to use them because the better we speak to each other, the better off we are in the sense of maybe knocking down that number that we were talking about earlier in our county. Because it's not just the extremes we're looking at, but rather our typical day-to-day stuff that could turn into an extreme. So therefore these tools become very useful. We practice them on a very regular basis. What we want to do to validate an individual when they're in stress is acknowledge that they're having a hard time. How do we do this? Tell them, hey, it looks like you're having a hard time. It looks like you're stressing out. You look like you're struggling. Can I help you? Is there something that I can help you with? Would you like to talk? Often it's really easy to see if somebody is at that level of stress, and many times they will not reach out, but sometimes it requires that maybe we talk to them. Some things to pay attention to. Tell them what you heard them say reflectively, of course, and let them know you're listening, just not hearing the words they're speaking. Encourage them to continue talking and remind them that you are here with them now. And this acts as an anchor away from the negative thoughts. That means you're paying attention to them. Anxiety comes on with thought, memories, worries, past hurts many times. That means they're responding now based on something that happened way back when. But what we're trying to do is create a new memory right now. One of, I'm here with you. I know you're uncomfortable, but you're not by yourself. And this elicits the attention into the immediate now versus the past being experienced right now. And it kind of splits that off, and it makes us more effective as helpers. And making good eye contact helps. Have you ever looked at somebody and it makes you uncomfortable? Whenever they have this like really intense stare. When there's anxiety, many times the stare is that, but it's not at you. It's a default option because the vision starts to narrow and they're looking and they can really only see, in many cases, in the extremes, what we call the edge of tunnel vision or foveal vision. So it's very hard to see that, but it's okay to make eye contact. But you don't want to make abrupt eye contact. You don't want to avert your vision necessarily, make them feel like you're uncomfortable. But try to make eye contact to what degree they allow as being comfortable, and you'll see the body language wherever the E's start coming on. Do not move in a way that indicates impatience or inconvenience at that moment. If they're really very stressed, motion sensitivity goes up. That fear or anxiety response could go up. So trying to stay as calm and as even in motion as in voice is probably an important thing as being with them. Okay? It's the how, the when you're there. So what to look for when developing rapport, communication with trust? There's some things that occur whenever the trust starts building. Okay, and it's really easy to see. One of the first things, very reflexive, and that's the breathing. The breathing changes. When somebody's anxious, what do we usually see? You might see a heaving chest. You might see wherever the shoulders are hunched forward. You might see the knees together. You may see somebody sitting down if you catch them sitting down, okay? And you see the hunched over quality, so therefore they're doing this crunch that keeps them from breathing well. So a lot of fast, shallow breathing. You might see some flushing, this sort of thing. But when rapport starts to occur, once again, communication happens by default. But once there's that sense of safety, it may not be spoken, but the breath changes. You might even hear a sigh. Once that sigh happens, that relief, that means that dynamic residual breath that they were holding, it's not happening now. That means there's a sense of safety. When we're waiting for impact, when we're in fight, flight, we inhale and our torso consolidates for in case of impact. That's just how we're wired. We're expecting damage. So if someone is seated, the lessening of the forward body lean, if somebody is tense many times, they will be pulled forward. The psoas muscle tends to fire and keeps you in that position because it makes you duck. But once that starts occurring, there may be a lessening of that angle. Someone may be sitting back in the chair versus leaning forward. They may not have their legs together or crossed. They may actually ease up some. And the crossed arms many times that you might see in front of the body may actually lighten up and loosen as well. Once again, Not what's said necessarily, but what you're observing many times. But the sigh many times is the tell that tells you safety is occurring, that you have encouraged that assumption of safety that makes things get better. A lowering of voice or tone, less intense and challenging. Often, whenever the tone is loud, it's because the blood flow has left certain areas of the body. Vocal cords, we lose fine motor skills, so we tend to be more gross and loud sounding, almost like a shout. Whereas before I could warble and vary my voice, I can't do that whenever I'm in anxiety or stress, or if I'm in crisis mode. We are now in big breath, open the throat, and it's not about sounding pretty, but about getting more air. But you may actually hear the lessening of the tension in their voice, and also the loudness of it. It may not sound quite as abrupt either. Okay, so those are going to be some details to look for when we're starting to see the trust or the rapport building. And it's not always going to be something that's spoken once again. Give me 10 minutes. The reason, the outcomes, and the difference. I kind of gave you the reason behind the program, that 10 minutes that we can keep somebody talking if they mention to you that they might be suicidal or self-injurious or that they've thought about it recently. That 10 minutes makes the biggest difference. And the World Health Organization has this on their site, but that 10 minutes drops the percentages of the people that attempt suicide and complete suicide. Keeping somebody talking when somebody starts mentioning that as we're helping them makes the biggest difference. If somebody isn't there, the length of time when somebody starts contemplating to the point one starts to attempt after they formulate a plan to complete, possibly 10 to 13 minutes. Our effective time to make a change, 10 minutes. So when an in crisis individual starts to contemplate suicide, the period of time to attempt and possibly complete once again is 10 to 13 minutes according to the literature. Not all people during the holiday will contemplate suicide when in crisis, but the difference that can be made in preventing someone from feeling invalidated, isolated, alone, or a burden to family, friends, and peers could be in that the stressed or in crisis person may not attempt or contemplate suicide, and we do two small things. And that's lend an ear and give a little time. It's a call to action. This is for all of us, not just y'all there, but the folks out in the audience as well, globally. These tools are not meant just for holidays, they're for everyday use. This is my invitation, my encouragement to y'all, my challenge is to use these with family, with peers, with co-workers. Whenever you're out and about, be mindful of not only how we speak, but how we present and what we're hearing, what it looks like when somebody approaches, because somebody may be reaching out. And hopefully it's not one of those where it's going to be the last time they're reaching out because they've lost faith because everyone else has invalidated them. We don't want that to occur. This is really what this program is about, to minimize the opportunities for invalidation, increase our communication capacity into a capacity for rapport instead, rapport building versus default communication. Stress and crisis can affect an individual anytime. We're all people, persons, humans, individuals, and we all deserve the opportunity to feel the following in our lifetimes from others. And that is love, care, acceptance, affection, patience, compassion, and understanding. And this is my wish for all of us, that we be able to share that and extend that to others. And that's it. We're all done. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this time with me. Go out and use these tools, talk to people. And if you see the link, share it, give it away, like it, please. Thanks for being here. Wow, we have a total of 3